What is the most NSFW thing you have seen at your job? Subscribe for more. Story 1. I worked in a fiber mill for about 10 years, and in that time, I saw my fair share of accidents. But one incident in our coding department will always stick with me. A guy was checking the clearances on some in-feed nip rolls when his hand got snagged by the wheels. Before he could react, the machine pulled his hand in, and when he yanked it back, he completely degloved himself. One of the operators working nearby saw what happened, sprinted over, and, without hesitation, ripped off her tank top, letting her chest go free for all to see. She immediately wrapped it around his arm to cut off the blood flow, likely saving his life. Nobody made jokes. Nobody said a word. We all just stood there, watching as she handled the situation like a pro. From that day forward, she earned the respect of everyone in that mill. Someone replied, "As an EMT firefighter for over 10 years, I've seen a lot of terrible things, but this one has always stuck with me." We got a call about a young girl who had both her hands caught in a set of rollers while cleaning them. Somehow, every safety measure had been disabled when they shouldn't have been. By the time we arrived, her skin had been stripped down to the muscle, completely degloved. The strange part? There wasn't as much blood as you'd expect. I was struggling to get an IV in, ended up putting it in her foot, when she looked at me and asked, "Will I ever get to hold my kids again?" I told her she would, but I joked that she wouldn't be doing any hand modeling anytime soon. She actually smiled at that. Given the situation, it was pretty remarkable. I've seen a lot of horrible things over the years and most of them don't bother me, but that moment, the way she asked about her kids, that one stuck with me. I don't know why. Maybe it just hit different. Story 2. I removed a severed foot from a shoe in the ER, watched someone die from drinking bleach, and then guarded the door while my coworkers banged, all in the same shift working at the hospital. Someone replied, "Back in high school, I had this one teacher, real unhinged guy. He eventually got fired for threatening to shoot students, so that should give you an idea of what we were dealing with. One day, in the middle of class, he casually told us that if we ever got an STD, all we had to do was drink bleach to get rid of it. But of course, bleach is bitter, so he advised chasing it with orange juice to keep it down. Just said it like it was common knowledge. Looking back, I have no idea how he lasted as long as he did." Story 3. UK truck driver here. One time, I was cruising down the M6 near Lancaster when I passed a coach full of women, probably on their way to a Blackpool hen party. Out of nowhere, the entire bus in unison flashed their tits at me. Absolutely made my day. Someone replied, "Fellow truck driver here. A couple of weeks ago, I was cruising down the freeway when I glanced down at a car slowly passing me. At first, I wasn't sure what I was looking at. Then it hit me. Dude was full-on jerking off while driving. Had a clear view of the whole thing. I'd much rather see tits. Wish I could unsee that." Story 4. I've been working in Vegas for the last 16 years, mostly helping guests in their rooms with tech issues. I can't even begin to describe some of the things I've seen. One of the more memorable moments? I was in a suite, arm behind the TV, trying to fix an issue, while a line of 5 or 6 drunk guys stood there, dicks in hand, waiting their turn with a very busy hooker. This kind of thing? Fairly common. Story 5. I used to work at a cafe, one of the big corporate ones, but I won't name names. One day, a clearly drunk woman stumbles in, cuts the line, and demands to use the bathroom. I politely tell her that restrooms are for customers only, but we have something on the menu for 90 cents. Hardly a big ask. She's not having it. Starts cursing me out, yelling, whatever. It's a dumb rule, but my manager is standing right behind me, so I have to stick to it. Then she hits me with, "Well, what are you gonna do if I just take a shit right here? Huh? Give me the key, or I'm gonna shit on the floor, motherfucker." And before I can even process what's happening, she drops her pants and squats right there in front of the register. I freeze. My brain completely malfunctions. This is beyond anything I was prepared for when I took this job. Then, in slow motion, my manager, a tiny woman in her 50s, rushes out from behind the counter and Sparta kicks this woman right in the face. Pants still around her ankles, the woman scrambles up and bolts out the door. And that moment, that kick, it will haunt me and inspire me for the rest of my life. Story 6. Years ago, I worked at a grocery store, and our meat department had this one clerk. Let's just say he wasn't the sharpest knife in the block. One afternoon, the industrial meat grinder jammed. Instead of stopping it like a normal person, this guy disables the safety latch and reaches in while it's still running at full speed. You can probably guess what happened next. 1 second, he's clearing the jam. The next, his arm is part of the jam. That was quite an afternoon. Story 7. Back when I worked at a grocery store, there was this one guy in the meat department. Not exactly the brightest bulb in the fridge. One day, the industrial meat grinder jammed. Instead of, turning it off like a rational human, he disabled the safety latch and stuck his hand in while it was still running. You can probably guess how that went. 1 second, he's trying to clear the jam. The next, his arm becomes the jam. Let's just say, nobody clocked out the same that day. Story 8. Someone got fired and took a shit on the warehouse floor as they were leaving. Someone replied, similar story, but this one came with a little extra creativity. At a big insurance company I worked at, someone absolutely smeared shit all over the bathroom walls. Nobody knew for sure who did it, but there was only one suspect, this one unhinged woman who just so happened to have her last day of work that same day. The mess was discovered right after she went home. Oh, and did I mention? She was about 60 years old. Hell of a retirement party. Story 9. Had a security officer get fired after he forgot to log out of a porn site on the work computer. Next associate to use the PC, greeted with a flood of pop-ups and vaginas all over the screen. IT security training really doesn't cover that kind of breach. Someone replied, back in my first IT job, we had an unspoken rule. Leave your computer unlocked, and you'd come back to a new, and likely embarrassing, wallpaper. Harmless fun, until this one temp guy took it way too far. Dude was weird, twitchy, and honestly seemed methed out. One day, he walked past the VP of IT's assistant's desk and noticed her computer was unlocked. So naturally, he set her wallpaper to a massive black penis spanning both monitors. A few minutes later, the VP, a well-respected black man, and his assistant, a no-nonsense ex-military woman, walked over to her desk. Cue methed out temp dude laughing hysterically, as security immediately escorted him out of the building. Story 10. I've caught co-workers, 2 men, jerking each other in the parking lot at lunch. Someone replied, guys can be real jerks sometimes. Story 11. On a Teams conference call with a bunch of people from a government department, everything was running smoothly, until one participant made a critical mistake. Instead of typing into a search bar in another window, they accidentally dropped gaping anus porn right into the Teams chat for everyone to see. Silence. Complete, stunned silence. No one knew how to react. Do you acknowledge it? Pretend it didn't happen? The poor guy immediately left the call, but his legacy in that department? Permanent. Story 12. Working the Taco Bell drive-thru comes with its fair share of weird moments, but this one takes the cake. I take an order, and in the background I hear a woman moaning. Not the I'm excited for my Crunchwrap kind, but the very NSFW kind. They pull up to the window, and what do I see? A guy and girl full-on going at it in the back seat. Another guy and girl, completely naked, chilling in the front. The driver casually offers me a hit from his blunt. Just another night in fast food, I guess. Story 13. A guy walks into the ER and asks to see a doctor. Standard procedure. The triage nurse asks, "Sure, what are you here for?" But instead of answering, he just repeats, "I want to see a doctor." This goes on for 30 minutes. No details, no explanation, just the same request on loop. Then, without warning, he gets up, walks to the bathroom, and starts screaming. A few moments later, he comes back out, pants soaked in blood. The triage nurse, obviously alarmed, asks, "Are you okay? What happened?" With complete calm, the guy says, "I just went to the bathroom, cut off my penis, and flushed it down the toilet. Can I see the doctor now?" The look on everyone's face. Pure horror. He actually did it. Story 14. A regular office meeting. Nothing unusual. At one point, a woman gets up and leaves the room. As soon as the door shuts behind her, one guy gets up, walks over to her chair and sniffs it. Like, full-on, deep inhale. Unfortunately for him, the whole room saw it happen. HR saw it too. And just like that, it became his last meeting with the company. Story 15. Back when I was a vice president of human resources, we were short-staffed, so I helped out with teller interviews for our bank. One day, reception calls to let me know my next candidate has arrived, and also that she's very inappropriately dressed. Curious and cautious, I asked one of my female team members to sit in on the interview with me, just in case. The candidate walks in wearing Daisy Dukes and an undersized tube top, not exactly your standard business casual. Her first question? Why is she here? Referring to my colleague. I explained that we sometimes have another HR person present to audit the interview, which clearly irritates her. Throughout the interview, she keeps mentioning she's 19, and I have to remind her, repeatedly, that age isn't a factor in our hiring decisions. For context, I was 40 at the time. Her only experience? Cleaning rooms at a local hotel. Still, I follow the process. Ask the standard questions, take notes, document everything. Then things get even stranger. She tells me she's seen me around town, specifically at a local coffee shop where I usually stop in wearing my suit. I politely explain that it's a small town. People are bound to cross paths. Unsurprisingly, she didn't get the job. But the plot twist? She filed a complaint against me with the bank. Thankfully, with detailed documentation and a witness in the room, the complaint went nowhere. If you like stories like these, please make sure to like and subscribe for more. If you have any opinions on these stories, let me know what you think in the comments below. I hope you all enjoyed today's story time, and I hope to hear from you all soon.